Today, we're going to be talking about using variables to describe patterns. This is from Unit 1, Lesson 4. Let's get into talking about variables. Variables are like magic helpers that let us describe patterns with simple letters instead of long, confusing words. Think of a variable as a special box where you can store a number that might change. When we see patterns in math, we can use variables to make them easier to understand. For example, have you ever noticed that when you add any number to itself, you get double that number? Like 3 plus 3 equals 6, or 5 plus 5 equals 10? Instead of writing this out for every single number, we can use a variable like n to represent any number. Then we can write n plus n equals 2n. This simple equation tells us the pattern works for all numbers. Variables also help us solve puzzles. Imagine you're thinking of a mystery number. When you add 5 to it, the answer is 12. How do we find the mystery number? We can call our mystery number x and write an equation. X plus 5 equals 12. Now we can solve for x and find that the mystery number is 7. Patterns are everywhere in real life too. If you save $2 every week, you can use variables to figure out how much money you'll have after any number of weeks. If W stands for the number of weeks, then your total savings will be 2 times W. After 3 weeks, you'd have 2 times 3 equaling $6. After 10 weeks, you'd have 2 times 10, which would equal $20. Variables are especially useful when patterns get more complicated. What if you start with $5 in your piggy bank and then add $2 each week? Now you can write 5 plus 2W to describe your savings after W weeks. After 4 weeks, you'd have 5 plus 2 times 4, which would equal 13. Remember, order of operations is still in effect there. You would need to multiply first. 2 times 4 equaling 8, and then add in 5. Now, learning to use variables helps you describe patterns in a short, clear way. It's like learning a special code that makes solving math problems much easier. The more you practice using variables, the better you'll get at spotting and describing all kinds of interesting patterns in the world around you. Have a look at this table. This is an input-output table. You can see the input starts at the number 1, and it increases by 1 each time. The output side of the table starts at the number 7, and it increases by 4 each time. That's really key to figuring out what operations you need to do to get from the input to the output. In this example, notice that we talked about the output increases by 4. That's really key. The 2 operations you would need to do here is you would have to, starting with the input, multiply it by 4, and then add 3. So in this first example, 4 times 1 equals 4, plus 3 equals 7, which is our output. And you will see that works for each of these. The next number 2, if I multiply it by 4, I would get 8. And then add 3 would make it 11, which is the output. And you will see that will work for each of the input numbers. If you multiply them all by 4 and add 3, you will get the output. Let's look at another example. This input-output table starts at 1. For the input, it increases by 1 each time. The output side starts at the number 3, and it increases by 5 each time. In this one, we will need to do 2 operations again. Remembering that the output is increasing by 5, that gives us a really good hint as to what we need to do, at least for one of the operations. So if I take the input, the number 1, and I multiply it by 5, I would get 5. But I know that my first output is 3. So in order to get 5 to become 3, I would need to subtract 2. I could write this as 5n, n being the input number, subtract 2. Remember, if it's showing as 5n and there's no operation symbol there, it means I multiply. So 5 times n, or 5 times 1, would be 5 subtract 2 equals 3. Let's look at the second input. It is the number 2, because the input increases by 1 each time. If that number 2 equals n, the number, and I put that into the equation I have here, 5 times 2 equals 10, and then subtract 2 would equal 8. That is my output. This will work for each of these. And you'll notice there's no number yet filled in for the output when the input is 6, 7, 8, and 9. So pause the video now and try this out on your own to see what you get. When you have done that and recorded your answers, come back, unpause the video, and check your answers. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed finding those answers and that you had success. Here you can find the output answers. When the input is 6, the output will be 28 because 6 times 5 equals 30. Subtract 2 would get you 28. When the input is 7, the output will be 33. 7 times 5 equals 35. Subtract 2 and you would have 33. And once again, these answers follow the pattern where the output column is increasing by 5 each time. When the input was 8, the output was 38. And when the input was 9, the output was 43. Let's move on to another one. Write an expression that relates the input to the output. And there's a hint here for you. There are 2 operations that will need to be done. Having a look at the input and output table, you will see the input starts at 24 and it decreases by 2 each time. The output starts at the number 10 and decreases by 1 each time. The input is also greater than the output. So here we have a pretty good indication that we would need to divide and divide by the number 2 since the input is decreasing by 2 each time. Well, that's my first hint. Think about dividing by 2 and what other operation you might do after that to get the output. Pause the video now to try this out on your own. Come back when you're ready. Okay, I hope everyone had success with finding the output using 2 operations. So my hint before was to start with the input and divide by 2. 24 divided by 2 would be 12. So your next operation, in order to get the output of 10, would be you would need to subtract 2. And that will work for each of them. First, divide the input by 2 and then subtract 2 to get the output. My next question is, if the input is 10, what will the output be? Using that same rule of those 2 operations, try to find the output. Pause the video now to see if you can do it. Okay, welcome back. If you answered that the output would be 3, you are correct. If we start with an input of 10 and divide that by 2, we would have 5. 5 subtract 2 equals 3, and that would be the output. Great job, everyone. For the next question, you need to write an expression that relates the input to the output. And there are 2 operations for this one as well. For the answer, you would need to multiply the input by 3 and then add 3 to obtain your output. Now, if the input is 7, what will the output be? Remember to follow the pattern rule for relating the input to output. Pause the video to give yourself time to answer, and then rejoin me when you have it. Okay, let's get to the answer. If you said that it would be 24 for the output, you are correct. If the input is 7, our output will be 24. 7 multiplied by 3 is 21, plus 3 more equals 24. That's all for now. Till next time.